Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I'm delighted today to have as my guest Ramses Bravo, who is the executive chef of the TrueNorth Health Center, also the author of Bravo Cookbook and Bravo Express. And Ramses, welcome. It's so nice to have you here. Thank you for taking the time for us. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world, championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
Doctor, thank you. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
And I know you deserve a Purple Heart. I know your boss for 40 years. You know, we're good friends, me and Dr. Goldhammer. So I know you've been through the paces out there. So that's it. And I know you've been doing it for 16 years. So it's been a pretty stable home for you, which is really amazing.
Yeah, this past middle of September, we finished our 16th year.
And I got to tell you, I've run retreat centers and so on for many years. And when you can have a stable situation like that in the kitchen, there's nothing better than that, because it makes everything just run so much smoother for everybody. So that's a godsend for the place and a godsend for Alan. So that's great. I wanted to ask you, I know you've been doing this for 16 years, and I'm going to assume that this is not the way you started out chefing. So let's go into a little bit of your background. I'd be interested to hear a little bit more of your story, and then what drove you to go in the direction of plant-based?
I grew up in my grandmother's kitchen. So from a very young age, I always enjoy the smells of the kitchen. She always looked so happy, just being in the kitchen, prepping, cooking, chopping, cutting, putting meals together. And I thought, that must be really cool, being so happy cooking. And I thought, oh, why not? I'll do that as a career. And so right out of high school, I knew, I'm going to be a chef. And sure enough, once I was done with high school, I went to culinary school. I did a 2-year program in San Francisco. And one of my instructor chefs at the time knew of a chef who he went to school with out on the East Coast, and he put me in contact with him. So I went over to West Virginia, and I did a 4-year apprenticeship.
Wow.
And so basically throughout all that time, I was, just regular chef, eating and cooking anything that moved. If it moved, there was a way to cook it and slice it.
Right.
And then once I was done with my apprenticeship, I went to, I was a chef for a fancy hotel in the area, still doing the same thing. It was like this Italian Mediterranean sort of cuisine, and it was a good job. We had fun. We had this huge wood-fired oven. We made lots of pizza there, and veal lobster. Lots of wine, lots of cheese. You name it. It was a good job. I was there for about 4.5 years. The couple who owned it decided to sell. And I decided that the new company was not for me, so I was going to move into doing my own gig. And I was in the process of that when I got a phone call from a lady. I forget her name off the top of my head right now. She was one of Alan's clients. She'd been to TrueNorth multiple times, and she was also a client of my mom's. My mom owns a hair salon, and so throughout my career, she kind of followed what I was doing, and she knew that suddenly I was quote unquote unemployed because I was in between things. Judy, I just remember her name, Judy. And so she called me and said, hey, I know this guy who's looking for a chef. He's got this gig and he's going to move it from where they're at, and they're going to go into the downtown Santa Rosa area. And that's kind of how I got connected with Alan, and we started talking on the phone a little bit. And that's kind of how the ball started rolling. And I knew that it was vegan, so that was, the first strike against it. Um, but somehow, my boss, if you've never met him, if you've never heard him talk on YouTube or something like that, one of the podcasts out there where he's at, he is very eloquent. He's very smart. He is, he comes across as a guy who knows what he's doing.
Right.
And so that kind of drew me in. I'm like, it'd be good to work for a doctor that kind of, who's intelligent, and, he seemed very well put together.
Right.
And he's been running a successful business for many years. And now he's doing an expansion, and, we're going to build a new kitchen and all this stuff. So there was, quote unquote, the components of what I saw, a good relationship, a good opportunity to open up a brand new kitchen and, kind of set it up the way I would want it and all that. The problem was that it was vegan. And up to that point, I really did not have much experience doing that type of food. And as it turned out, it was SOS free.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that because I know, vegan is one thing. And as a chef, that must have been quite an interview when he laid out that, well, not only do you need to do this, but we need to take away salt and oil and sugar. So talk about how that mindset affected you.
Like I said, he's very smart.
Right.
And so he didn't give it to me all at once. I had multiple phone interviews and face interviews with him. And the SOS part was broken up into, oh yeah, but by the way, we don't do S. And then the next meeting, oh, by the way, we don't do O. And then the next one was like, oh, by the way, we also don't do this other S.
Right. So you were learning all of this on the fly, pretty much.
Pretty much. Yeah. I decided to take the job for whatever crazy reason. And at the time I thought, I was still sort of, this is not what I went to school for. This is not what I trained for. This isn't like real kind of thing. This isn't real chefing. However, I still want to do my, I was going to set up a catering business. And I thought, I'm going to end up having some clients that want some specialty type of menu that I don't know enough about. So I'm going to take this job, and I'm going to be here for 6 months, and then I'm going to go back to being a regular chef.
Right.
And it was very strange, not in a bad way. It was just very different. So I take the job. I was at a very high weight. I didn't have much energy. I started the job, and people ask me this, well, how'd you do it? If you were so unaccustomed to, not cooking without salt. What I did the first couple of weeks, I had a little container, a little dish where I had some salt hidden in one of the cabinets. So we would make the food, and then I would take a little bit for myself, salt it, and then try it so that I could figure out whether I had made a good dish.
Right.
I figured, if my level of salt is much higher, then I'm going to make the food and then put a little more salt for me. That way they're tasting it at the same level that I am, so to speak. So I did that for the first 2 weeks, and then after that I was able to get rid of that little container. I didn't need it anymore.
Well, you had to deal with all the umami and all of it. I mean, you were really trying to get all the savory stuff in, the tastes in.
Right.
And as a chef, I know you're used to operating with certain parameters for that. And here you're kind of shifting that a little bit, though, you can do it with spices and various plants, which of course you've mastered and you've done. So yeah, it's kind of intriguing. So the other side of that is, to me, that you weren't really living that way yourself, or did you start to really embrace living plant-based yourself because you came into it, you weren't quite there yourself. And so now you were making some of that shift in your own life too. which is a big step too.
Yeah, no. So I was not sold on it at all. I was just putting in my best effort at the job which I had taken. But I had mentioned that I was heavy and didn't have a lot of energy. And so what happened after that 2-week sort of adjustment period with the salt, I continued to do my job. And as you mentioned, it was a shift from doing like the regular sort of aromatic steps to where do we maximize flavor, or how do we maximize flavor at every single step?
Right.
And so for me, it was a different way of cooking and eating, because I was eating my own food because I wanted to taste everything and make sure that I was doing my best job possible. And lo and behold, I dropped a bunch of weight.
Right.
Just by working. I wasn't really trying to, I didn't go, well, since I'm here, I'm going to go on a diet. Nothing like that. I was just eating the food I was making while I was at work. On my days off, I was, back to my regular thing, which at the time, I had no intention of changing. And so just 5 days out of the week, eating the food that I was making, I dropped a whole bunch of weight. And that was my first kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, something's different.
Yeah, right.
It's good different, but I don't understand it. That was
you had a little bit of an aha moment at that point. The light went on just a little bit.
Yeah, it went on, but I didn't understand how it had been turned on. And so I've had a bunch of those as I've been here. As I mentioned, my original plan was 6 months, and now I've been here over 16 years.
Now, so during that time, you were feeding what, 40, 50 people a day, 3 meals a day? Was it around that amount at that time?
Somewhere between 20 and 40, depending on, how heavy the week was.
Right.
At this point now, we're more to like 60, 60, 80.
Now you got the 6-month waiting list. I know what it's like to get in there now for people. Yeah. It's really tough.
Yeah. And so, suddenly I'm doing this sort of type of cooking that I don't really necessarily believe in, because it was never what I intended to be. But I lose a bunch of weight, and I have a whole bunch more energy, and I'm able to play with my daughter, keep up with her running around. Right. It was difficult to go back. It was like, like I've seen the other side, and now I can't just turn around and just go back and pretend that it wasn't there.
Right.
It took me some time. It took me probably like 6-7 years to fully embrace it, because I was constantly sort of in this dilemma of, when do I go back to real cooking? And yet I'm looking at this way of doing things, which is highly, highly beneficial. And I can see that every day in the patients that we feed, and I see their progression from the day they show up to the day they leave. And, we've done wonderful things for a lot of people. And it's hard to turn around and pretend that all those good changes are not there just for the sake of going back to cooking the regular way.
I'm here with Executive Chef Ramses Bravo from the premier TrueNorth Health Center. We're going to take just a short break to hear from our sponsor, the National Health Association. You're listening to the Health Science Podcast Show. I want to remind you to visit the National Health Association website, where you'll find incredible resources to support your healthy lifestyle, including plant-exclusive eating without added salt, oil, and sugar. Simply go to healthscience.org or nationalhealthassociation.org. Be sure to check out membership, which is only $35 per year for those living within the United States and $55 for those living outside the U.S. You'll be amazed at all the information and benefits you'll receive. As a member, You're kept up to date on the latest evidence-based tools for health promotion. You'll receive the incomparable quarterly magazine, Health Science, a beautiful 40-page advertising-free publication mailed to your home or offices, loaded with articles, recipes, inspirational stories, and interviews with world leaders in the fields of personal health, plant-based nutrition, water-only fasting, animal rights, and environmental support. And you'll receive details about life-changing events, such as the extraordinary annual conference of the National Health Association and diverse opportunities for plant-exclusive NHA cruises and travel vacations to exotic destinations around the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and now back to the show. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast. My special guest today is Ramses Bravo, the executive chef of the TrueNorth Health Center. You know, you made an interesting statement, because I think it's the way it's often portrayed out there. You know, when were you going to go back to real cooking? They always talk about real food versus, plant food, as if it's not real food, So, of course, we know better, but it's interesting how many people see it that way. Okay, you're eating that, but when do you go back to real food? So have you made that commitment completely in your life now? Are you completely vegan and SOS, or do you still battle with that a little bit in your own life?
I still battle with it. I don't do any oil in my cooking anymore. No sugar, for sure. The salt is the hardest to give up, especially when we have kids in the house. So it's hard to try to get a kid who just wants to be a kid and the teenager who wants to be a teenager to give up salt.
Well, one of the strategies for that we've talked about with other people and in my own life and practice is that instead of cooking with the salt, sometimes when food's done, if you just kind of sprinkle just a hair of that on the surface, you'll have that taste when you eat it without having to load the cooking process with salt. And that actually helps people make that transition a little bit. Do you buy into something like that? Can you see the benefit of that? Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's kind of how we approach it here in the house. It's sort of, if you need it, it's there at the table. You can add a little bit, but we don't add it in the cooking process.
How many children do you have?
Depends on the week, with mixed families. We have none sometimes, some days, and sometimes we have two.
Yeah, but you've raised two children, basically.
Well, one of mine, and then my girlfriend has one of hers as well.
So that's something you've tried to bring the plant-based thing into the child's life more and more through the years. Is that what you've done for your daughter?
No, we don't call it that. We just call it food, and
just call it food.
We're going to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and whatnot, and we don't put labels on it, because the moment we put labels.
Well, you can turn. It's interesting, and I'm going to bring up a point, because I was looking at the kinds of courses that you do online, which is remarkable, and I like what you're doing, because when you have people eating in a vegan way, vegan, plant-based, whole food, that's already a nice step up for people. When you raise the bar to SOS free, it actually almost inspires the feeling of deprivation and restriction. And in all the years of counseling people, I've yet to find anybody who loves deprivation. In fact, when you tell people not to do something, there's a part of their brain that just wants to do it and wants to do it in your face, basically.
Yeah.
So, but what I liked what you were doing online in your courses, you're teaching people how to add variety, how to mix flavors so they can. So in a way, what you're doing is you're taking away that sense of deprivation. And while the bar is higher, you're making that bar seem very achievable and very doable. And I really like that about the way you've structured your courses. So talk a little bit about your online program. I'm assuming it still goes on. Do you still do it?
Oh, yeah. It's essentially you sign up for any of my courses, and then they're pre-recorded. You go at your own pace, and you watch any of the videos as many times as you want.
Yeah, which is great. Are you still doing the Bravo spinning plant-based wheel? I love that little video that I watched.
Yeah, I did that as a part of my YouTube channel as well. And so we did a a series where I had a wheel spinning, and every section of it had an ingredient, and so we spin the wheel, and whichever ingredient it landed on, I had to use and make something out of.
Keeps you on your toes when you do that, because now you got to really be a little bit creative, which was great. I liked what I saw when I watched that.
Yeah, it was essentially, nobody knew what was going to happen, and not even me. It was just like,
Yeah, that's the beauty
oh,
of it. It was really cool. So
yeah.
do you have a fair number of people with the online program? How is that?
Oh yeah. I think the first course, which came out about 4 years ago, there is about 8,000 people who signed up
Wow.
for it. And
Wow.
then the ones that followed, because they were, a year later, and then the next one a year later, they don't have as many people. But give it enough time, they'll all have, thousands of people.
That's fantastic. Is it really as a group, or are people able to have a one-on-one with you, or smaller connection with you? Does it work that way or not?
Well, they're all pre-recorded, and as I said,
Okay.
people go at their own pace. I get emails that tell me, "Oh, I totally binge watched your first course," or I watched this one video, and then it made me jump to another one because you mentioned something about down the road, and some people call me about a specific section. Um, and so the kind of one-on-one happens if people contact me, and I respond to every message I get. Sometimes not as quickly as as I get them, but I try to get back to all of them.
What I noticed was I like the idea that you went through your courses. You get everything from, layering flavors to being able to pick fruits and vegetables and keep them sustainable. How do you keep them really fresh? And then what tools do you use, and core prep techniques? You really take people through a really nice progression of how to develop really good kitchen and prep skills. And I'm assuming that's really what your goal is and how you counsel people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I basically imagine a person who had either no cooking skills at all, or maybe they had cooking skills, but now that they're doing this plant-based SOS free thing, it's suddenly all new to them. And so I built that one person from the ground up, and that's kind of the approach. And for the beginners course, I talk about, this is how you set up your kitchen before we
Right.
take the cutting board and the knife and all that. This is where the cutting board should be. This is where the knife should be. This is what when you look at your kitchen, this is how you should organize it, so that you're not tripping over yourself because you went this way and now you got to go back the other way to get the next item.
What
So
are the 6 core techniques that you teach in that course? It says 6 core techniques for preparation. What are they? Which ones are they?
oh, we do more than that. I think what happened was when it first came out, we did a certain amount of the modules, quote unquote, the chapters or the sections. But as we added the second and third course, we added then more pieces to the first. So it's been, we've added more compared to day one, so to speak.
Yeah, that's great.
But for that one is, let's see, setting up the kitchen for, proper flow. Then the next chapter is the whole thing is about how to use a knife properly, which people go, well, I know how to use a knife. And then they watch the thing and it's like, oh, no, I did not know how to use it. And I give explanations about everything. Like, look, I'm not just saying do it this way. I'm saying do it this way, hold the knife this way and cut this way because of this, this, and this. Because if you do it differently, this, and this is going to happen. And so I try to make it simple, easy to understand, and also, again, a reason for everything.
Right.
Then when we talk about combining flavors, I'll talk about, each ingredient in this particular recipe is doing something. It's not just I pick 6 things randomly and I put them together.
Right.
this ingredient is giving you this ingredient is giving you that, and this one is this. When you put these three together, you get this
Right.
thing.
Yeah,
And so-
the videos were incredibly instructive and fun too. I'm here with Chef Ramses Bravo, and Ramses, let people know how they can find you, find your courses, follow you. Tell what's the URL, the location where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is bravopb.com. Bravo, my last name, and then PB stands for plant-based, not peanut butter. .com. And aside from being able to sign up for my online courses, there's a free recipe database. There is some frequently asked questions type of thing, products recommended, because people ask me all the time, well, what knife do you recommend? What tool do you recommend? What pans do you recommend? And so we have that in there. So if you want to sign up for one of my courses, great. If you're just looking for a quick recipe, you can find them there. Oh, there's if you towards the bottom, you can also sign up for my newsletter. But towards the bottom, there's a few like sample videos which connect you to the to some of the videos I've done on YouTube. And I think one of them is that spinning the wheel kind of thing.
Right. Well, when people come into this way of life and this way of cooking and eating, not everybody's at the same place. So I'm assuming that you'll get people that come to you that are not just SOS free. They're going to be trying plant-based and vegan. And what I liked about what I saw is I felt to me like you embraced all of those people. It wasn't like, really just selecting out the people that just want to go SOS. I know that's been your focus, but you also help people just get into the world of vegan and plant-based food prep without necessarily having to make that next high bar commitment to all of that. Is that true? Am I reading that right?
Oh yeah, no, that's true. I don't push the vegan thing or the plant-based thing to anybody. I never tell anybody go plant-based, go vegan. I just say, I show them a way to make plant-based meals. I show them how to make them really tasty. I explain to them why they're so tasty. And if they choose to do that full time, great. But if not, if somebody who eats, let's see, 7 days a week times 3 meals, that's 21 meals. If somebody who eats 21 regular meals, meaning, they'll eat the meat, the salt, the sugar, the dairy, the everything.
Right.
If they switch out 3 of those for plant-based SOS, I've done my job.
You're rocking and rolling at that point.
That's right. I have helped them improve their life. And if down the road they go from 3 to 5, great. And if they progress and eventually they become full 21 meals a week plant-based, great. But if they stay at the 5, that's great. That's 5 meals for that one person who is eating better compared to where they started. And if that's what they're doing, I've done my job. And so I don't discriminate against anybody regardless of their diet. And, my job is just to simply help people eat healthier, whether it's 1 meal, 20, 100, whatever it is.
Right. I know one of your interests, you had mentioned it earlier, was being involved in like a catering business. And I know TrueNorth has evolved that takeout and takeaway kind of business over time. So is that something that you're very much involved in at TrueNorth also?
We actually, Dr. Sabatino, we stopped doing that actually.
Oh, you did? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, what happened was we've been adding rooms to TrueNorth. And so we're busier, and the kitchen has stayed the same size.
Understandable.
So we made the choice to putting those labor hours and those resources to the extra people that we were getting.
Making more space available for people that need it. Yeah, absolutely. I get that. For people that don't know, TrueNorth Health Center is one of the premier fasting centers in the world, and it has been for a very long time. So you've had to work with Dr. Goldhammer on the refeeding of people coming out of fasts. Mm-hmm. What have you gleaned from that? What have you learned from that? What kind of things have come out of that for your experience in dealing with that, because that's one of the most precious states there is. Refeeding, people don't realize, I don't think sometimes, that in many ways that's even more important than what goes on in the fast, how people refeed. So, what kind of little techniques and things have you learned and have you incorporated over time for that refeeding phase?
Let's see. In the beginning, we had, or they had a standard sort of in place,
Right.
where coming out of a fast, you would go automatically just to juice for,
Right.
I think, one day, depending, one day,
length of time.
days of
Right.
fasting. And that was it. That was the standard. Everybody went to that standard. Nowadays, we still have that, but we also have people with sensitive refeed menus, people who, and our sensitive refeed has 4 different stages. So we do the standard plus those 4 things, and then people go into smoothie mode now, or they go into what we call our blends, which are essentially a hot smoothie, a cooked potato and zucchini smoothie,
Right.
or a cooked squash and zucchini smoothie type of thing. Sort of like a soup.
Right.
But when you've been fasting for, however many days, that first one for just about everybody's like, oh my God, this is so amazing.
Oh, I know, because your sensitivity is so increased that you
Right.
can have a piece of plain romaine lettuce and you're kind of,
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
And when I tell them, it's just cooked potatoes and zucchini with some water, and then we blend, it's like, oh, no, this tastes amazing. There has to be something else. I'm like,
Right.
No, you just fasted. That's all.
I bring that up. I wanted to bring that up because I think people don't realize how important breaking the fast really is. And you see a lot of online people fasting and with no knowledge. And this is a very, very special time. And I just wanted you to emphasize the kinds of things you did, because that's what we as fasting doctors have found so important over time. That refeeding phase can really make or break the fast to a great extent. So it's a very special time.
It is, because it's like, you've reset the system, meaning, a person's body and digestive system, as well as other things. But, we have this person who has a digestive system, which we've completely cleaned out. We've cleared it out. We got all the gunk out. Now let's start filling it up with the best possible fuel, because if we just go back to putting the same stuff that we just cleared out, we're going to do a big disservice to this person. So breaking that fast and reintroducing the right foods, the right meals, as you said, is so important, because it now gets that person on the right path and say, okay, we've cleared all the junk. Now this is what this is what you need to eat, so that, your goals, meaning that particular patient, everybody comes in with specific goals. Like, the fastest way to reach your goals is going to be this way, which means this is what you're going to eat now.
Right.
And you can really mess up or almost waste a fast if you go right back to the same stuff.
Yeah, let's shift just one little gear. How's your success been with the Bravo cookbooks, the Bravo cookbook and Bravo Express? Has that been successful for you?
Oh yeah. The Bravo cookbook is probably 13 years old. It came out of it came to production about 13 years ago. Last numbers I got, 17,000 plus copies have been sold.
That's great. And how about the Express?
The Express is about 5 years older than that, or 7, I can't remember. We are at 10,000.
That's great. And the Express, I gather from looking at the Express book, it's kind of like more easy, quick fix things that you can make. Maybe if you're on the run, busy families, busy households, because we all have that. And I gather that this is really for more easy, easy food prep.
Correct. It's called the Express because there's less ingredients and less steps. So just about every recipe is 5-6 ingredients, maybe 3 steps. So it's like bam, bam, bam.
Yeah. Well, do you have any as we wind this down? Do you have any final things you'd like to say to the people out here, to the audience?
It's not that hard as you think it is. I think one of the fears that people have is like, oh my God, I could never go plant-based. I could never give up the sugar and the oil and the salt. And people think that they have to completely reinvent the wheel, that everything they know about food and about cooking just goes out the window and they have to restart everything. And that's not the case. It's almost silly, funny, but I tell people, okay, if you knew how to cook before, the fact that you can put a skillet in the stove and turn it on and wait for it to heat before you add your food, so you get a nice sear or a nice sauteing going on, all of that still useful. If you knew how to put something in the oven and get it nice and roasted and golden brown, that's still useful to you. All your chopping skills, still useful. So we don't reinvent the wheel when we go to this diet. We simply redirect it. That's all. So it's really not that difficult. Throughout my years, I've enjoyed writing for the NHA magazine. You can let people know, or I will do that. For anybody who's interested, the NHA does a great quarterly magazine. I've been featured on it a few times, and I believe the October issue just went out. There's some great interviews in there with great doctors who talk about all SOS-free plant-based diets. So a lot of great information in there.
Well, I want to really thank my special guest today, Chef Ramses Bravo from TrueNorth Health Center, for sharing your expertise, your time, your heart. I urge our audience to follow Chef Bravo, and the website is in the show notes, as you can see, and take advantage of his courses. And it's a great way to segue into this way of life and really kind of raising the bar on your own nutrition to really promote high-level health and well-being. And I really want to thank you for being here with us today. Thank you so much. And
thank you, Dr. Sabatino. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, and I want to thank our audience out there for joining us today. Without you, we can't do what we do. I want to thank you for being very much a part of this active, healthy community that we're creating. And on behalf of the National Health Association, I want to thank you for being with us today. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I look forward to being with you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.